Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are enjoying this show, do me a favor and tell me about it, all right? Leave us a rating and review. We want to hear what you love about the show and anything we can do to make you work harder for your investing goals. And if you haven't done so yet, for whatever reason, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We got a fun one today. I'm talking to my man, Rich Summers. Rich is an active real estate investor and entrepreneur holding a portfolio of apartment buildings and short-term rentals valued in excess of $35 million. Now, he is a podcast host, an entrepreneur, and most recently, he founded FortuneCribs as he discovered a shortage of sophisticated, performance-driven operators and a growing need for an all-in-one acquisition, design, and management firm in this short-term rental space. Let's welcome to the show, Rich Summers.
My man, Johnny, it's great to catch up and excited for this conversation today, man. It's Friday. We got playoff baseball in San Diego. Dodgers are in town. I'm excited, man. Big things happening, brother. How you doing?
Well, I love it. As we're recording this, obviously the playoff series has started. I'm from Cleveland originally, so my Guardians are playing too. Okay. So we'll see how they net out. By the time this airs, obviously you all will know what transpired, but that's where we're at right now. Hey, Rich, I went over your bio at a very, very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah. So I grew up middle class. My mom was an immigrant from Taiwan. Both of my parents know the value of working hard and saving your money. And I was taught from a young age to go to school, get good grades, go to college, and get the job. And for the most part, that's what I did. I have a background in sales. While I was going to school, I sold cell phones, and then I got into car sales. I sold used cars for Nissan down here in San Diego. And that was my first taste of what it was like to control your paycheck to a certain degree. Really excelled at it. I loved the whole sales things. And I wanted to sell commercial real estate when I got out of college, but it was 2008. I interviewed with a couple brokerages, CB Richard Ellis and Grubb and Ellis. And, as you know, and your audience knows, things were turning south at that time. And so they pulled both of those internship positions and they said, hey, we love your hustle, but this is not the right time to get in this industry. So I found myself on a used car lot wondering, what am I going to do with my life? And I backed into a position with the government as an air traffic controller. So I accepted that position. They flew me out to Oklahoma City. I ended up doing 6 years in a town called Palmdale, California, which is like the armpit of California, and ended up doing that career for 11 years. But along the way, I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I remembered real estate. And I was like, dude, I got to get back into real estate. I got to figure this out. But I wanted to do it on the investment side. And so I did nothing but study, educated myself for 9 months straight. Books, podcasts. I even started a real estate meetup before I had even bought any deals. And about 9 months in, I had the confidence to take action. I cashed out my 401k. I pulled out a home equity line of credit from a condo that I had here in San Diego. And that was my seed money to get started. First deal was 11 units out there in Cincinnati, Norwood, actually, your neck of the woods. And shortly after that, I partnered with two guys and we JV'd on a 32 unit building in Indianapolis. Both of those deals were C-class value add. And got through those deals, got a little bit of experience with my own money and made a bunch of mistakes. And then shortly after that, started a podcast, learned how to raise money and took down a couple larger deals out in the Carolinas. And earlier this year, I launched a new startup, as you mentioned, FortuneCribs, where we operate short-term rentals all over the country. And right now I'm pivoting and going all in on boutique hotels. Just closed on the first one about 6 weeks ago. And I'm putting together a pretty cool team right now. We're going to go buy 10 or 12 of these hotels in the next year.
Man, I love it. Listen, first of all, I told you to take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps. And boy, did you fill in those gaps in those 2 minutes, man. I don't even know if I was sitting there taking notes like a firefighter style, but my hands on fire. But I think I got the gist of it. So I'm going to play back what I heard, right? So born to Taiwanese parents, learned kind of the hustle from kind of that culture, went to school, graduated, first job really in the sales space. Worked on a used car lot, selling some Nissans. Then they got a job as an air traffic controller since commercial real estate wouldn't let you in the industry in 2008. And then you ultimately, got to the point where you realized real estate is where you needed to be. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad was that book that kind of triggered it for you. And that ultimately led to you focusing on education. First deal, 11 units, in Norwood, Ohio, down this, just 15 minutes away from where I'm at right now. And then you ultimately started to scale from there, right? You mentioned the JV deal in Indianapolis, some larger deals in the Carolinas, and then moving on to what you're working on now, boutique hotels, FortuneCribs. we're going to come back and talk about those things. But I really want to get to some of the mindset things for you first, because I mean, that's a lot, you know. You talked about like, first of all, you know, wanting to get into commercial real estate. And I think it's really interesting that, you know, you talk about recognize you want to get in commercial real estate back in 2008, that time frame, and doing all the things, the steps to break into it, right? You knew you had the sales skills, you had that background from being a used car sales, recognizing that that was really transferable into commercial real estate, but not being able to find a role and to be able to come back around. I think so many people get interested in whether it's real estate or whatever, but they have a passion or something they're interested in, and then they end up going down a different path and never really kind of come back around. So
Absolutely.
I know you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and you realized the tweak you needed to make was, instead of coming in as a broker or kind of in the professional service side of it, you wanted to be an investor. Just take us back to that moment. What was it specifically that made you want to be an investor and take the 9 months to educate yourself before pulling the trigger on that first deal?
Yeah. I mean, I did all the things that society tells us to do. You know, I went to college, I got a degree, I got a job, and it was a cool job. I liked it, but I just started to get bored. I was like, dude, I need more out of life. It became unfulfilling to just go through the motions and clock in and clock out. And so I just needed more. And so that's why I started educating myself. I started reading those books. And the more I read about those books and the more podcasts I listened to, the more I wanted it and the more inspired I got. And, you know, when it came time to take action, I was like, well, I'm either going to cash out my 401k and pull out a HELOC and go all in, or I can play it safe and maybe take like a $50,000 loan from my 401k and go really slow. And I said, you know what, let's go all in and let's make it happen. Because at the end of the day, you know, a lot of people told me it was too risky. Even my parents told me it was too risky, all those steps along the way. But at the end of the day, all those risks are real. So put some weight on them. But on the other side of the balance scale is another risk. And it's this: I could be 80 years old one day, laying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, kicking myself because I never fucking tried anything in life. How about that risk? That's a risk too that no one talks about.
Yeah. I love it, Rich. Listen, so you took the risk. How long ago was this, by the way? I mean, when you start as an official real estate investor?
Yeah, 2019. So just 3
All right, so a few years ago. All right, so 3.5 years ago, you get started doing this, right? Getting that deal in Norwood. You should have called me back then because I owned in Norwood at the same time. So you getting that deal in Norwood. Do you still own that, or do you sell it?
I do. Yeah, I since done a cash out refinance. I pulled all my money out and then some, and still own it.
All right, we'll talk offline about that property then. So got the 11 unit Norwood, and then you did these JV deals. Just talking about kind of the progression. So you do that deal. What made you go? And do you own that by yourself, or do you have partners on the?
I own the 11 unit by myself. The 32 unit in Indy, that was with 2 partners.
So how did you go from, I'm taking my money, I'm going to place this bet on doing this deal? You did a cash out refi, so, you know, it worked out. And then you say, hey, you know what, to grow, I want to partner with other people. What was that process like?
Yeah. I think, you know, just listening to certain people, I knew that like we wanted to go a little bit bigger. Right. And so I knew I had 2 partners at the time, and they were looking for their individual deals. And so I went to them and I said, hey guys, what if we put our money together and looked at something a little bit bigger? And so we started underwriting bigger deals, and the numbers just seemed to pencil a lot better. And we could, you know, divvy up the work. And I thought, you know what, let's do that. And that was the 32 unit deal. And it ended up working out pretty good. We made a lot of mistakes along the way, of course. COVID hit shortly after we closed, but we ended up renovating about 50% of the units. It was a C-class property, 1970s construction in a good submarket of Indy. And 2 years later, we were talking to a broker because the property next door was listed, and we're like, holy cow, like, can we really get something like close to that guidance? He's like, absolutely. So decided to list it, and we ended up selling that property for 3x of what we paid for it 2 years later. And all we did was renovate half of the units.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. I mean, definitely great insight there. On being able to do that. What do you think drove that, right? When you go back and play it back, what do you think drove kind of that 3x return?
Well, one was the market conditions, right? Cap rates were compressing from 2019 to early this year, but a lot of that was operations. You know, we bought this property, it was underperforming, it had very, very low rents. It had a lot of vacant units and down units, and so we went in and cleaned up the deferred maintenance. We renovated half of the units. We proved that value add concept there. And then we positioned this property to the next buyer as like, hey, we left some meat on the bone for you guys. There's still upside. And it was in a great neighborhood. I think that was the main thing. We bought a really shitty property in a great neighborhood.
Hey, that's what they say do, right? Buy if you can
Yeah.
buy CD assets and AB locations, you're going to
Yeah.
crush it, right? Especially if you're doing a
Yeah.
value add play. So really good insight there. And I think it just goes back to the fundamentals. We can
Mhm.
get super carried away with finding deals and all this stuff, but it
Mhm.
comes down to finding an undervalued opportunity. And you want to
Mhm.
be in good markets where there's demand. And if you could find an underperforming asset in the good market, there's an opportunity to create value there. And that's what you were able to do. And obviously drove some really strong returns for you and your investors. We talked about you kind of, doing the deal by yourself, working with investors. And as you kind of scale and grow and have different interests, obviously things kind of evolve. Just talk to me about kind of the evolution and, where are you at today with the business and what changes had to be made in order to get there?
Yeah. So after that 32 unit deal, we partnered. We started a syndication company called Pack 3 Capital, and we partnered with a group that we had on our podcast early on, and we did a mentorship program with them. They didn't really have a formal coaching business or anything like that, but we liked them. They had transacted north of 8,000 units out there in the Southeast, and they are based out of North Carolina, and so. We liked that about them. There wasn't a bunch of other students. It was just us and them, and we'd be learning directly from them. And so they taught us everything we knew, how to raise capital, how to put together larger deals, how to source investors, how to get these things deaded up. And we co-sponsored a couple larger deals with them, 150 units out in Greensboro, North Carolina. And then shortly after that, we took down another 145 unit property also in Greensboro. And we got a lot of experience with those two properties, and decided to pivot earlier this year into boutique hotels. We took down our first boutique hotel, and with that partnership, I recently decided to remove myself from it. I love those guys; they're amazing. We were together for about 3.5 years. We did some badass shit together. Love them to death. I wish them nothing but the best. We're still friends. We're still going to continue to operate those properties together. It's just we're growing at different paces, and I think our vision is no longer aligned. And in terms of like how we're going to get from point A to point B, it's just not aligned. And so I felt like in order for me to reach my full potential, I needed to remove myself from that partnership and go on and do my own thing. And so it was a tough decision. Just went through this last week. But since I've made 3 hires, and we're moving into a new office, and I got a good vision. Everyone on my team is going to get a slice of equity in all these deals that we buy, and we're going to go in and try to take down 10 to 12 boutique hotels in the next year as I see an opportunity in this space.
I love it, man. Listen,
Yeah.
those partnership breakups can always be a challenge, for someone who is either going through a similar situation or they're thinking about entering into a partnership. What advice would you give them about how to navigate that landscape?
Yeah. Well, the first thing you want to do is make sure that they're aligned in terms of just like being a good human being, right? You want to make
And
sure
that
they have
changes
good
over
morals.
time, right? I mean, well, not being a good human being, that should be
Yeah.
consistent. But, obviously who you are today is not who you're going to be 5 years from now. And as
Yes.
people grow, especially at
Yes.
different rates, that just simply may change, right?
Yeah, exactly. Your alignment of interest and vision is always going to evolve at different paces, obviously, and you can't control that. But I think first and foremost, make sure they're good human beings. See how they talk to others. See how they talk to vendors, brokers, because that's going to affect your ability to get deals and attract investors, right? The other thing is you want to partner with people who complement your skill set. So for me, I'm a people person. I love the acquisition process. I love sourcing deals. I love talking to brokers, and I love capital raise because I just love talking. And I have the sales background. But that doesn't mean I should partner with someone who also loves to raise capital. I should partner with someone that's more analytical, maybe likes to underwrite and likes to do some of the back end stuff. So those are the 2 things that I would look out for.
No, great tips there. And I think it's just very mindful that one, there's a professionalism too. So even if relationship, I don't want to say breaks down, but partnerships, sometimes they last, sometimes they don't. Part of
Yeah.
what you want to do is be very clear on how you dissolve that partnership, but then
Mhm.
also you want to work with people who can exit a partnership professionally, right? If you
Yeah.
realize, hey, we're going in different directions, or you've got,
Yeah.
a different goal than I've got at this point. All right, how do we make sure we take care of our investors first and foremost? How do we do what's best for the properties?
Mhm.
And then ultimately we can kind of work on an exit plan. And I think having a bit of maturity, professionalism, all that's really key. And if you can have those conversations up front, it just
Mhm.
makes it easier if you get to the point where you realize you need to actually execute on some of those things. So,
Absolutely.
anyone, if you're going through the partnership, they can be great. It's a phenomenal way to scale. I tell everyone that I do not know a single successful commercial real estate investor who does not have people they work with either as a direct partner or high level employees who add a ton of value to the business. But most of them have actual partners who have equity in the deals and
Yeah.
have a say and have to align on the deals. So
Mhm.
there's a pro and con. If you want to scale, you kind of have to work with other people, but you have to
Yeah.
figure out how to work those relationships as well.
I agree. And the other thing about it, I'll say is like, for your listeners out there, if you have partners and you feel like you're no longer aligned in terms of vision, just know that that's normal. It's normal for people to cut partners as they grow. I was at BPCon last week, and I had been thinking about this for a while. It's a tough decision, but I had spoke to a couple people at that conference that I respect in the industry, and they were like, "We cut partners all the time when we're no longer aligned. It's part of business. It's nothing personal." And that was what gave me the confidence to be like, you know what, you're right. Like you will only grow to the level of your constraints, not your potential. And so if there's any of your listeners out there that have something holding them back, or maybe something that's no longer aligned in their life in terms of where they're trying to go tomorrow, I encourage them to take action, because at the end of the day, life is short and we could all die tomorrow.
I love it, Rich. Hey, man, let's talk about some fun stuff, right?
Let's
Instead
do
of
it.
death
Let's
and
do
cutting
it.
partnerships, man. Listen, I've been following you on Instagram for a while, and you have blown up, man. I love watching your posts, your engagements. They're visual. I feel like you got a new video every day almost, and it's always fun and engaging content. So, one, I want to talk about social media, but I really want to talk about the two things I see you talking about, right? You've got your FortuneCribs brand, you
Mhm.
have your boutique hotels. What kind of gave you kind of the spark to really engage from a social media standpoint, and what kind of tips and insights can you share to help grow that presence?
Yeah. So I didn't start putting out content until 4 months ago. And I just had an epiphany one day. And I just realized, all the top entrepreneurs in the world today are not necessarily the smartest business people. I'll give you a couple of examples. Conor McGregor, he's got a Proper 12 whiskey brand. It's valued at $600 million. This guy's a UFC fighter. He's not a business guy. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, he's got a tequila brand that's valued at $4 billion. He's not a business guy, right? But he's got an audience. And I'll give you the best example. Kylie Jenner became a billionaire at age 20. She probably doesn't know much about business, right? Doesn't have much experience with business, but the one thing she has is she has an audience. And so I realized I had this epiphany. I'm like, you know what? People buy into these personalities. And it's so important to build that brand. It honestly, with today's age and technology, no one is watching the news anymore on their TV. They're getting their news on their cell phones, on social media. And so if you can figure out a way to build an audience and you have back-end products to monetize it, you will make more money than God.
Hey, man, great insight right there. I
Yeah.
think the audience thing is so key, and it's something that as a former marketer, I guess technically you're always a marketer if you have a business, but as a
Yeah.
guy who used to be an advertising and marketing
Yeah.
professionally, I just echo the sentiment, right? The biggest thing is
Mhm.
having an audience. And if you think about the way people consume media today, that audience is so key because now you can transfer platforms, right?
Yeah.
If you build a big audience on, say, TikTok, you could probably transfer them over into maybe an email list or to your YouTube channel,
Yeah.
whatever it is. So you having that audience is so key if they build a relationship with you. It used to be, you only had television, radio, you only had a handful of really clear platforms to
Hmm.
get an audience. But now anybody who can influence people, anybody who can create content, you can build your own audience. And to your point, now you become an influencer, which means you can sell different products. You can,
Yeah.
show people how to monetize various things
Yeah.
as long as you're adding value to them, right? So that's a key thing to go. And most of the people we're talking about are real estate investors who are looking to either find deals or raise capital for deals. So this is a key aspect of being able to let people get to know you as well. Even if you're not
Hmm.
selling a product, just for people to feel comfortable with you and get to know, like, who is this person? Like, what are they doing? What are they like? Do I like this person? Is this somebody I want to
Yeah.
do business with? Like, that's all really important to use social media to help you there.
100%, man. You hit it on the nail there. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. So, 20, 30 years ago, before social media, if you were an artist living in the middle of Kansas, you were not going to be able to make a living selling art. But in today's world, you could live anywhere in the world and be a amateur artist and just have a good social media presence and tell people what you're putting together. And you have a business right there just by selling art, living anywhere in the world because you're on social media. That was not possible 20, 30 years ago. And so that is the value. But what shocks me today is there are so many people in our industry, real estate investors, commercial real estate investors that are doing big shit, big deals, multi-million dollar deals, and no one knows who they are. It's mind boggling to me. Why is that? Like, why do they not share what they're doing? I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, part of it is some people like, just being in the dark and not necessarily being well known, and other people, I don't know, man, just haven't figured it out, don't know how to get it done.
It's only going to make your business easier if people
It
know
will.
who you are. When you go raise
Absolutely.
money, it just comes in a lot easier, a lot quicker. So I don't know why more people aren't doing it. It's mind boggling to me. I know one of my buddies. He's doing big stuff in the retail space. He's doing a deal right now with SpaceX and Elon Musk. I'm
Oh,
like, dude,
wow.
you're doing a big commercial deal with Elon Musk, and like no one even knows about it. I'm like, dude, you're missing an opportunity here, my man. If you
Yeah.
look at Grant Cardone, the guy
Yeah.
gets it. Say what
Yeah.
you want about Grant, but that guy is a master marketer. You could take all his real estate away, and that guy can touch any business that guy touches will turn to gold because everyone knows who he is and he's got an audience.
Yeah, man. I love it. Listen, your business right now, you mentioned that you're getting into boutique hotels. So
Mm-hmm.
one, why? How did this come about? And then two, just talk to us a little bit more about what that actually means. Because, maybe we hear hotel investing,
Mm-hmm.
boutique hotels is a little bit of a different angle. So just talk to me about like how this kind of came to be and where you saw the opportunity.
Yeah. So along the way, while I was, focused on buying multifamily, I started buying some short-term rentals on my own here locally in San Diego. And those things were just cash flowing very, very well. They're plug and play. The calendars stayed full, and they did very well for me. And I saw the tax benefits were great. And I was like, you know what? I need to buy some more of these. And so I ended up buying more. I ended up starting this company to where now we manage and operate 31 short-term rentals all across the country. And so I built out this team. It's in-house, and we have virtual assistants in the VAs. I have a couple key team members here that run the whole company. They do all the day-to-day from the guest communications, the utilities, the vendors, the repairs, maintenance, all the accounting, everything. It's hands off, and it's a great company. But how the boutique hotels came into play is we were underwriting multifamily deals. We were looking at 150 plus units. Stuff that would pencil. And we were finding that we were underwriting 200 to 300 deals to find one or two good ones. But then those one or two good deals would have 45 offers. And by the time you got the best and final, if you were lucky enough to get there, like you were going to overpay for that asset. And so we felt like it was starting to be counterproductive. I know other people are finding deals, but at least in the markets we were looking in, it was very challenging. And so we felt with the short-term rental experience in this short-term rental company that I built out, the management company, the boutique hotel was the perfect thing. And so with the boutique hotels right now, there's a lot of mom and pop operators that have owned these properties for 30, 40 years. They have no technology, no social media presence. They're not utilizing Airbnb or Vrbo. And these properties haven't been renovated in 30 years. And so you can go in and pick up these properties on seller finance, and you can pick them up for pennies on the dollar. And you can go in and renovate these properties and then bring in my management company who can operate these boutique hotels free of on-site management, which allows us to bring an additional room online, which traditionally the innkeeper would sleep in. So we get an extra room online, and now we're renovating these properties, we're bringing them back to life, and then now we're implementing our operations. So we're marketing on Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, Hotels.com, and then of course direct bookings, and then we're bringing in social media marketing. And by doing that, we're able to 3, 4, even 5x the NOI of these properties in just 18 months time. And then you go to refi out, you can use what's called an SBA loan, which you don't do for apartments, but in the boutique hotel space, since it's a small business, you can actually refi into an SBA loan, and they go up to 85, 90% LTV on these cash outs, which is crazy. And so that's kind of how it came to fruition. And I just see an opportunity right now. Everyone's looking for multifamily. I feel like there's boot camps everywhere. Everyone's pushing multifamily. Hey, anyone can get off the couch and raise money to go buy a deal. Well, no one's looking for these boutique hotels right now. And I just feel like when everyone's zigging, I'm going to zag. And I feel like with this company, we're best suited to go take down a bunch of these. And so we're going to go all in. We're going to buy 10 to 12 of these things in the next year. And we're going to rock this shit, my man.
I love it, man. I love it. Definitely finding a way to seize an opportunity where there's a challenge. You have a gap in the marketplace and you can fill that. It seems like it'd be very profitable. You mentioned, based on your business plan, you can increase the NOI by 3 to 5 times in just 18 months. And because of these SBA loans, you are able to refinance about 85 to 90% of the value. So obviously what we're talking about here is the ability to come in, implement your business plan, And then within 2 years, you're able to pull out your equity. So you're in a much better place there. Really good stuff. If I'm playing, I guess if I'm very interested in this, one of the questions I would have is, but it's hotels and we may be entering into a recession, or we're already in a recession, depending on what you want to believe. Are you concerned on, the hospitality market and travel and leisure and how that's going to impact the business model?
Sure. That is something that we consider, but we're targeting hotels that are beachfront, coastal, and with our renovations, we're making these property, 5-star accommodations. And so the demographic that we're attracting are not people that are going to be affected by a recession. These people are still going to continue to travel. And it's the hotels that are, tired and are not in A+ coastal locations. Those are the ones that are going to get more affected by this recession, if you feel like there is a big recession coming. And the reason for that is because that demographic that's going to stay at the budget hotel are going to be more affected by any upcoming recession. The other thing I'll say, which is for any of your listeners out there, this is a very interesting benefit of what we're doing, and this is a new strategy. Because there's so much value add in these boutique hotels that we're targeting, we can take down these properties day one and own 100% of these properties using none of our own money. And I'll explain how we're going to do that. The one we just closed on 6 weeks ago, I'll give you that example. So we bought this property, 10 rooms, beachfront on Northern California, right on the coast. All the rooms have living rooms, fireplaces, kitchens. It was a 2001 built property, has great bones. We bought it for $1.5 million. The owner sold it to us for less than what he paid for it 20 years ago.
Wow.
Because he just didn't know how to run a hotel. And he financed 70%. And so for the down payment, the renovation costs, the holding costs, and reserves, we went and raised money from investors, but we did not give them equity. We created an investor LLC, which lent a promissory note to the hotel LLC, personally guaranteed by us. We paid them 20% interest, paid monthly, no equity, and then we give them their money back when we refinance in about 18 to 24 months. We went to the investors. We didn't know how they would receive it. They loved it. It filled up in less than 24 hours, and there was a lot of people that couldn't get in. They get a fixed return. They get 20% cash flow. They get their money back in 2 years or less. And we get to own 100% of this asset because there's so much value add. And so moving forward, I know the appetite is there with the investor database. I'm going to target properties that are coastal, that have these steep value add plays to where we can comfortably pay off with the refinance proceeds, the seller finance note, and then also the investor note. And the last thing I'll say is this: the lending environment right now is tightening for all asset classes, especially hotels. But because of that, there has never been more sellers out there looking to sell that are willing to do seller finance. I'll say that again. Seller finance right now is easier than ever to get because the lending options are dried up. And so go out there and find the seller finance, find these good deals, and make it happen, because this interest rate environment is temporary. It's not fixing the supply and demand issues that we have across America. The fundamentals are good. The demographics are good. I think in a year from now, we're going to see inflation come back down. I'm projecting a reversal in interest rates a year from now, and there's going to be a lot of new money entering the market then. And I think we're going to see another bull run. So right now, I see the next 6 to 12 months as an opportunity to go out and pick up a lot of seller finance deals, renovate these properties, and then when everyone starts jumping back in a year from now, we're going to be ready to rock and roll.
I love it. Hey, real quick, just you mentioned how you're structuring kind of the LP portion of that with the promissory note. When you're going to seller financing, what kind of terms are you offering that seller? Where did you kind of net out there?
So the one that we just did, he did 70%, 6% interest only, and we had a 5-year balloon payment.
Oh man, that's awesome. So listen, I mean, Rich just gave you a really good insight. A couple things. One, he talked about how to use the current lending environment to your advantage. So if, multifamily is a little bit different, but if you are in hotels or other asset classes, I actually just reading something today that talked about multifamily being the only place where lenders are comfortable. Well, that's great for the multifamily lending environment. If you are in hotels or other areas, this is the time to really push for seller financing, because they know that it's difficult to get financing on these other asset classes. So if you can do that and get 60, 70, 80% LTV, well, now you only have to come up with the difference there. And if you can do it in a similar fashion with your LPs, now you set yourself up in a way that is very advantageous, both in the short term and the long term. So really great to know. And I think it's another, tool in the tool belt for investors to have. That seller financing thing, honestly, since I've been investing in commercial real estate, hasn't really been an option because the lending environment was so advantageous that most people would, especially multifamily, like, well, no, just go out there and get a 3 or 4% interest rate loan, and you're good. And if you can't do that, you probably shouldn't be buying this property. Versus now, I think the challenge is there where people are more open to being creative on structuring these deals to get them done.
And one more great thing about the seller finance is, up until this date, I have not had an individual investor invest more than $250,000 in any of my deals. That seller that financed $1.1 million for this hotel we just bought, guess what he's going to do when we refinance him out? He's going to give me that $1.1 million right back for the next project, and now he's my biggest investor. That's the real value.
That's amazing. Great to hear. Yeah. Let's talk about FortuneCribs real quick. So, what exactly is FortuneCribs? And I know that this kind of came out of some of the work you were doing in the short-term rental space.
Yeah, absolutely. So initially when I launched it, our idea and our business plan was, hey, let's be a one-shop stop, turnkey short-term rental firm to where we'll help a client acquire a short-term rental that meets our quality of standards that we feel like, is gonna cash flow for them. And so we did a bunch of those deals. We brought in a bunch of clients. We went and did a bunch of deals. We have 31 listings now. Is great. But now with this opportunity with boutique hotels, we're making a big pivot. And I'm like, you know what? Let's stay boutique. Let's not say yes to all these clients that want to get in, because let's be honest, at the end of the day, not every client is going to be someone you want to work with, right? All of our clients currently are great, but we say no to a lot of people. And right now our mindset is, hey, let's just work with the best clients with the best deals, more so luxury properties if we're going to do a short-term rental right now. And then let's use this as an arm to manage and operate all of our boutique hotels that we're going to go buy. And so really, that's kind of our mindset right now. Let's just stay boutique. Let's use it to manage our own deals, and let's only say yes and work with the best clients and the best deals. And that's pretty much it.
Rich, I love the mindset and I love the progression of you as an investor, because what's happened here is you knew you wanted to get into this space. You found a way to get in, starting with smaller multifamily with that 11 unit. You kind of scaled up there through JV partnerships, right? Finding guys who are like-minded. You partner with them to buy, mid-sized apartment buildings. Ultimately, you found mentors and other experienced partners to get into larger syndication deals. And then you realize that there's an opportunity to do some short-term rentals, and then ultimately go into kind of this boutique hotel space. And I just love the fact that you're constantly reinventing. I shouldn't say reinventing, but you're constantly looking at the market where you're struggling and reevaluating what's working, what's not working, and making adjustments. And I think that's one thing that we can take away from this, is that if you're trying something, and I mean truly trying something, because oftentimes people say, oh, it's hard to find a deal. But then you say, oh, how many deals did you look at? And they're like 3. And it's like, okay, well, you're not looking at enough deals. But if you're underwriting hundreds of deals and they're not penciling, if you're putting in offers and you're competing with 40 other people every single time, yes, now you can step back and say, okay, is there something in our process we want to change? Or maybe we need to adjust the kind of properties we look for. And for you, you said, you know what, I think we need to look at different types of properties. And maybe I'm doing well in this single, this STR space, right? So this short-term rental space, maybe I should do more of that. And then that led to kind of the boutique hotel. So I think it's really important to step back and say, well, where am I seeing success? And how do I do more of that? Even if it means a pivot in the actual asset class that you're buying, you're going to focus on the things that you are seeing good results from. And that's going to help you grow faster. So that's my big takeaway, is figure out what is working in your business, what is working in your approach, and see how you can replicate that, and figure out who you partner with, or how you figure out how to overcome whatever other challenges you face.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Your email, or your best way to connect with you is through Instagram. So if you want to connect with Rich, Rich_Summers is his handle. It's a fun page to get on. You do a lot of great videos, educating people in the multifamily space and in apartment buildings and hotels, I should say, as well. And it's just a fun page, man. You got a lot of beautiful things going on there. Rich, let's go on to our round of insights. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
Ooh, that's a great question. When I bought that first 11 unit property in Cincinnati, I had hired the wrong property manager. And literally 6 weeks into it, I'm like, you know what, I got to make a pivot. And I took action. I made a pivot. I brought someone else in right away, and that person is still managing that property. And so my takeaway from that, and the real value for any of your listeners, is as soon as you feel like, hey, you made a mistake, well, go ahead and take action and pivot, because us as entrepreneurs need to pivot in order to win. Those who pivot win in business.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
I would say, that's a good question. I would say in the short-term rental space and boutique hotel space, you want to use a pricing tool, a dynamic pricing tool, which will calculate what the local hotels and short-term rentals are doing in your market. So for example, if Beyonce is in town on Tuesday night for a concert, 6 months from now, I don't know that, right? But this pricing tool knows that. And so it will dynamically set the pricing accordingly. So if you are in that space and you're doing hospitality or anything like that, and you're not using a dynamic pricing tool, do yourself a favor and go get that pricing tool, because it's gonna double your revenue. It really will.
Do you have like one or two specific ones that we can list?
Yeah,
check out?
I love. We use pricelabs.co.
Okay.
Yeah, they're great.
That.
Yeah.
Thank you. Give me a book that you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
That's easy, man. It's I'm sure your listeners have heard this many times, but it's definitely Rich Dad Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant. Those two books from Robert Kiyosaki are like just on mindset and how you look at money. It's just such a game changer. It really is. And everything we do is mindset,
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
We started using Monday.com. And it's great. A lot of entrepreneurs I respect in the space are using this now. They have an app. Our whole team uses it. And it's just like any action items or to-dos or tasks, it's just in there. You can assign it to someone and you can put a due date. You can see exactly where everyone is. And it just makes everything a lot more organized and a lot more simple. So I definitely highly recommend checking out Monday.com.
What's your number one insight for investing?
Take action, because we learn by doing. Don't wait for everything to be perfect to get started.
Love it, man. Listen, let's lighten the mood. You're in San Diego, beautiful beach place. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
There's so many good options here, man. So I live in a neighborhood called Little Italy. It's in downtown San Diego. It's got all the best restaurants in San Diego down here. But I have to say my favorite in San Diego is a good old fashioned California burrito. So there's a few Santana's taco shops in here, a bunch of taco shops, like every other block. But my favorite is Santana's. They got them here in Pacific Beach. And there's one in Old Town, but I'll get a California burrito. It's got carne asada in it, pico de gallo, melted cheese. And then I always have to have the green verde salsa with some red salsa. And I have to have extra limes on every bite.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, we'll check that out the next time we're in California. And just always fun talking to you, Rich, man. I want to thank you for coming on the show today. My big takeaway was, I think your sales background helped tremendously. And I always like to try to just learn, like, hey, what are the skills that this person developed and how did they develop them? And I think your skills, from a sales standpoint, probably help fuel you throughout the rest of your career, even as a air traffic controller, but particularly as an entrepreneur, getting into it, taking action, as you talked about, getting the education, spending 9 months there, doing that 11-unit deal, doing the JV deals, doing the larger syndication deals, and then pivoting more into STR and the boutique hotels. So I just think it's really insightful to be mindful of what are you doing, what results are you getting, and making adjustments as needed. And that ultimately led you to the space you're in right now. Again, anybody wants to connect with Rich, check him out at Rich_Summers. We'll make sure we link to that on Instagram in our show notes there. So check that out. And Rich, I just want to thank you again for coming on Multifamily Insights. Great catching up with you. And please hit me up the next time you're in town, man.
Yes, my man. I appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed the conversation. Next time I'm in Cincy, I'm definitely going to hit you up. Let's do dinner. And we got to get you out to San Diego on one of our yacht meetups one of these days, my man. Let me know when you're in town.
We'll do, man. We'll do. I may make a special trip just for that one. So, all right.
Yes.
All right. Take care, buddy.
All right, man. Appreciate you.